Hey guys, welcome to my video. So today we're going to talk about a table. This is an outdoor table, one that I built to put down in my shooting area. Behind my house I've got an area where I shoot guns, and my brother was over a few weeks ago and he and I were trying out a new handgun he bought. And he told me, he said, Vance, what you really need down here is a table so we can set the guns on it, set the ammo on it and everything, and it'd be nice and organized. What we were doing was setting all that stuff on the ground, which he was right, I shouldn't be doing that. So anyway, what I decided to do is design it and build it out of pressure treated wood. That way it can withstand the climate, the weather, and everything outside. So this video, I'm going to just walk you through kind of how I very loosely designed the thing, and then cut it out and screw it together and everything, and show you the finished product. And maybe to give you some ideas, it's similar to building like a picnic table or any kind of, maybe wood furniture, or a lot of even building a deck is kind of like this too. You're building the structure out of pressure treated lumber. So check out the video and let's build this table. So first I'm going to show you this sketch that you see on the screen right here, and I quickly threw this sketch together. My concept for this table that I want to make is made out of all pressure treated lumber, and the top working surface would be deck boards. So deck boards are like 5.5 inches wide. All the rest of this was going to be 2x4s. So again, I wanted this to be super simple. I wanted to just really throw something together. So I made this sketch and I looked at it and I said, well, that looks fine, but it might be a little flimsy, so I probably need some supports. And then I made this sketch here where I said this would be really better if it had some angle supports. And then I said, well, how will that look? So then I made this sketch and said, well, it could, be even more sturdy if the legs were tilted out just a little bit. So you can see I kind of went through this very quickly. So then I moved on to drawing it up in CAD. And I've already drawn this, and this is completely 2D. I didn't model any of this in 3D because, again, I'm trying not to overly design this. I want to show you that you can quickly design things, throw things together, and end up with a really good design that's very optimized without having to go through a lot of three-dimensional CAD. So the only reason why I CAD'd it in 2D was because I wanted to see what it looked like to scale. So these sketches over here, this view and stuff is not really to scale. And I had no way of knowing whether or not a 2x4 would really look that thick, or whether or not this would really look this sturdy, right? It looks nice and sturdy here, but once I built it out to the actual dimensions, it might not look this good, right? So that was the idea of doing it in CAD. And as you can see, all this was 2x4s that you see here. When I did it in CAD, it all looked good. I did end up changing the design, so I've still got the 5 deck boards for the surface, 5 feet wide. And I did do a slight angle on the leg, so you can see I just set it to 32 at the bottom. I did decide to put, instead of braces on all 4 legs, just 2 angle braces in the middle. And that way there's nothing, you can get up close to this with your legs and your legs aren't banging into something. That was kind of what I was thinking. I did determine from this drawing that these boards, these support boards right here on the edges of the legs, need to be 2x6, since I was going to bring this in at an angle, and the 2x4 was going to be cut at an angle, so that 2x6 worked out better for that. So then I took this information that I drew up, I looked at it, and I said, yeah, you know what, that's a good visualization of what I want, and let's build that. So then I made a BOM. A BOM stands for Bill of Material. So here's the actual BOM for it. And all I did is I went through and I said, well, okay, we're going to have 2 leg stabilizers, which were these things that were 2x6. And I measured them on here, and it was about 30 inches. Then I said for the work surface, we're going to need 5 deck boards. Each one is 60 inches. We're going to need 4 legs. I measured them here, it's 36. The table front, that would be like this board right here in the front. there's two of those, one in the front, one in the back. Table sides, I did put three since there's actually one here, here, and here. And the length of what those would be. I think I just measured those because those aren't, that length isn't really showing on here. But so you can see that's 24 and a half right there. That's this item. And then the angle braces, you know, they're like 35 and something. I just threw 38 on here because this dimension really didn't go all the way up anyway. Anyway, these are all just 2x4 pressure treated. So then I just did a little formula here. What's the total length in inches? And then I came up with the raw material buy list, which is what's down here, to make my table. And all I did, I'm not going to go through it, but all I did is I just went through here. This is what these little X's are. I kind of said, okay, well, 2 leg stabilizers, 60 inches total. Well, to do that, I'll get one 2x6 by 8 foot long, right? You can't get a 60 inch, you can't get a 5 foot long 2x6. 8's the shortest you can get. So anyway, I said the work surface is going to be 60 inches by deck board, so 5 feet. So I pretty much said, let's get 10-foot links. That way I can just cut them in half, and each board will give me 2. So I got 3, which will actually be enough for 3 of those boards. So there'll be some extra. So you get the idea. Mainly, I wanted to have this list for when I went to the store to buy my material. I already have things like screws to put it all together. So what I wanted to show you is that actually, to start with, I took a tape measure and held it up and said I kind of want it this big. Then I made a rough sketch of it. I went through a couple of iterations and ended up with this. And this is what I'll get the material for. The key thing to remember here is once I get the material in, I may not build it exactly to this plan because I may get into it and I may tweak a little bit of things, but it's good to have a plan. You don't have to necessarily follow it perfectly, but it's always good to have a plan and not just, you know, wing it the whole way. Mainly because you're going to end up going back to the store and buying more material over and over. Or you're going to end up buying a lot more material than you need. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to do for this table I'm going to make is I'm going to cut the deck boards all to 5 foot length, all to the same length. So I need 5 5-foot pieces for the table surface. So here's the lumber I got. There's the rest of it for building this table. So I bought 3 10-foot long deck boards. I got them all stacked up here. On this end, I got them all fleshed up as good as I could, and they're laying on top of each other. So something to keep in mind when you're building stuff is that dimensions for lumber that you buy aren't really precise. So you can see these aren't actually the same length. So here you can see we're actually about the one that's the longest here is about 10 foot and 3/4 of an inch. So we'll just go ahead and mark these to 5 and cut them to 5, because even on the other ones that are a little shorter, they're about 10 foot and 1/2 inch long. So we'll just cut these to 5. One of the things you always got to do is determine which end you're going to start with. So this end with the tag has got kind of this bad spot, if you will, a knot right here. The other end looks a little better, so we'll use this end, this factory end we'll use to start with. Okay, we'll measure here to 5 feet, which is 60 inches. We'll put them on it. I always like using one of these things. This makes this real easy to do. Get a square line. Okay, so the piece that I'm going to keep is here on these 2 black sawhorses, and I position my line right there so I can cut it without cutting into the sawhorse. And then the piece that I'm going to cut off, if you have extra sawhorses, this is the best way to do it. That way when it's cut, it's just sitting right there. So what we have here is the first pieces. So this is 5 deck boards and 2 2x4s cut to exactly 60 inches. And we're going to stop there on our cuts and then lay these together and do some measurements. So what I did next is I took the 5 deck boards, I laid them together. I put them up against this 2x4 here to make sure they were squared off. And I laid a square there to make sure I had them all, square and everything. Those cuts turned out pretty good, so you can see everything's lined up really well here on the other side. The reason why we did this, the reason why I wanted to do this was so I could measure the length to determine the cut length for the 2x4s to go across with these pushed all the way together. Now, some people say when you're building the deck, you'll want to leave a gap in between each one of these so water will drain out. From my experience, if you have wood that like this is pretty wet still, it's not really dried out, it's got quite a bit of shrinking to do still. So if you just butt them up end to end, you'll end up with a gap once they shrink and they dry up. So next I took the board off. I laid the 2 2x4s where they're going to go. These are the actual 2 pieces that will be screwed down in this position, so I need to know what size 2x4 is going to go here and here. And note that what I decided to do was pull this 2x4 in from the edge just a little bit. That'll be a little better edge for the edge of the table. Instead of having this right on the edge, I'm going to bracket in maybe ½ an inch or so. I'm actually just going to kind of do it by eye and make a measurement and see how it looks. Again, this is why in the on the plan, I'm not just cutting everything to the plan, because that was a rough plan just to get me going. And I'm firming up these measurements with little details like this little overhang. So it looks like 24 5/8. The other good thing about doing this is 2x4s are actually 3.5 by 1.5, and that's how I laid it all out when I did the design. But in reality, they're not exactly those dimensions. Like this particular 2x4 is, I don't know, about 1 9/16. So laying it out like this is a good way to do it. That way you know you have the right measurement. You're going to get the result you want. Okay, so one of the things I want to point out is you always want to take into account the quality of your boards that you have and place them correctly. So I'm just gonna, so this board has got this side, it's kind of ugly, it's got this spot in it, and then it's got a good side. So I'm gonna face this good side outwards here, and I'm gonna put this in, and I'm gonna put this up against the tabletop so it just really won't show. So I'll put it here. And then like with this board, it has this waning on it right here. I put that to the inside so it won't show on the outside. So as you put your project together, always face your boards in the best way you can. I did the same thing with the deck boards for the most part. So just how I like to do it. So I put a center mark, and then I measured over 3/4 of an inch either way, so that this is exactly a 1.5 inch mark, and that'll help line that board up just right in the center. I was actually thinking about attaching the brace boards together right here on the tabletop surface and everything from the bottom, just attaching them to each other with screws. But really, I don't think that's the best thing to do because because of these boards here, like this one for example, it's not really laying flat. So I think it'd be better if this frame were just sitting on the concrete surface. It would be more flat when I screwed it all together. So one of the things I don't always do, but I'm going to do it this time just to show you, is I'm going to measure in. I usually just approximate where to put the screws as far as how far from the end, but you want these screws that go in right here, you want them to go right into the center of the 2x4 that's right here. So all I'm going to do is measure in 3/4 of an inch and just throw a couple lines on here. Nothing that has to be perfect, but that'll keep the screws in the right spot. We also had the marks here in the middle on this one, so I'm going to do the same thing. And remember, we made that mark while these were laying down flat, so I'm just going to line that up here on the back side, and a couple marks like that. Oftentimes, I will just run the screw straight through here, but I tried that on one of these boards, and it did crack just slightly. So best practice in general is to run a drill through first. You know, I picked one that is matched to the shank size here. You don't want it loose either. It can still be a real tight fit, but that way we won't split any of these boards. So the good thing about this of laying it on the floor is a nice flat surface that'll make sure it's square in the Z direction. And then we'll use this square right here, as you can see, just to make sure it's square in the X and Y direction. So once you've done that, we'll just run these down and try to keep it as tight as we can so it don't jump around. Got all those screwed in the corner. Last we're going to do these, and remember we made these marks here, which makes it really easy to make sure this one's right in the middle. Other thing I want to just point out is we've got this laying on here as if this would be the tabletop. So we want the boards flush up against the tabletop. So like in the case of this one, you know, you don't want the board up high like this. You want to push it down so everything is pushed, as you tighten these screws in, pushed up against the floor so it's all flush in that direction. The other thing for this board to keep in mind is, since it's not on the edge, we're not able to use the edge of the other board to align it. So you can take this and set it here so it'll, you won't be angled in this direction. Okay, so what I was just doing is getting the boards centered on the platform the way I want them. It's mainly done by feel. You notice I wasn't measuring this overlap, I was just feeling of it, just making sure it was the same all the way down, and getting them squared this way. You know what, it's not going to be perfect, but unlike a deck, and on a deck you usually just start with one board and you lay it, you screw it down, and then you lay the next one, you lay the next one. Well, we don't want this to work out that way. We want this to be nice and centered with an even overhang on both sides. So that's why I lay them all down, and then I'll screw them in starting from the center and go out. So the tabletop is fully assembled now, and I just wanted to show you. I've stood it up on its end here. So there's the top side, and this is the back side. So just to review, I put in, two 3-inch screws to hold the 2x4 frame together. Also here for that middle piece. And then on the deck boards, I did two screws into each deck board, except the one on the end. I did one. Didn't really want to put one in here because it would have went into a weak area of this 2x4. Something to keep in mind when you're building like 2x4 and dimensional lumber structures is that every time you puncture these things, you weaken them. So you have to remember, this 2x4 is already weakened right here, and to put another one in right in this corner could damage it. It cause this corner piece to break. So you see I moved down a little bit, gave a little bit of space, moved down to here for the next screw. Putting one in the corner may have been bad for this piece too. So, and then I just kind of spaced them out a little bit. Down here where the middle piece is, right here, you can see I put one on either side, and then did one right here. So, and then went all the way across. So that's just how I did the screws. That's just based on some judgment, and I did, draw a line down through here. So these would be on line, and for these, I measured in. This overlap just kind of came out to what it came out. Remember, we just kind of chose that on the fly based on feel. So I measured in, and it looked like the center of this stud was 1 1/4. So I just took my speed square and just used it to know how deep to put those in. And in this direction, I just, I guess up and down, I just eyeball spaced those along the outside. We've made the tabletop now. That's all done. And you'll notice that according to the ideal dimensions in CAD, that those inner pieces are going to be 24.5. And then once we put a lip on them on the table, and we accounted for the variation in dimensions, it ended up being 24 5/8. So that just kind of shows you that you have to adjust when you actually go to build. I did this dimension, so we're going to do the legs next. So there's 4 legs. They look like this. All 4 will be identical and just flipped around on the other sides. I added this dimension, and then I added this dimension. So there's an oddball angle down at the bottom, and I just laid out whatever angle it was to make a 36-inch tall table have a footprint of 32. So it just came out that way. But it was 0.420. That's really close to 7/16. 7/16 is 0.4375. So to get this angle, we'll just measure off 7/16 and then draw a line, and that'll give us the angle that we need there. I don't like to work right from the rough edge, so it'll give us a nice corner. Then I measured in 7/16, and then we'll just put an angle right there like this. Okay. So this is the first leg we just cut. It's got the two angled edges on it. It left us with an angled piece here. So for marking the next one, we'll just take this one, lay it on here, flush it up everywhere. And mark off the next one. That simple. Just one thing you want to keep in mind is we want to keep using the same board as the same pattern for all. We don't want to use this one as another pattern and then the next one as another pattern, because you could accumulate more error that way. So according to my diagram, the measurement across the legs was supposed to be 32, and it's actually turned out to be like 33 1/4. That's okay. It just means that that angle wasn't perfect, but as long as it's consistent for all the legs, it's fine. It'll still set level. And when I go to cut this 2x6, it's going to go right down here. I'll custom cut it to this 33 1/4 angle that or distance that we ended up with. So we've got two of the legs in place and screwed in now, and we want to do this cross member that's a 2x6. And I sized it as a 2x6 so that it, this 2x4 coming in at an angle wouldn't overlap the edges of it. Honestly, when I threw it into CAD, I just like arbitrarily placed it at a place that looked good, and it turned out to be about 9 1/4. So just to stay consistent with this diagram, if I'm going to use this dimension, I'll put that back at 9 1/4. And instead of going by this 29.78 width, we ended up with 33 on this, and that's fine. So I'm just gonna mark this board based on the position of the legs. So these two legs I got screwed in, and the 2x6 I'm gonna use is right here. And you'll notice I use this to measure out to make sure that this was at 9 1/4 on both ends. And we'll go ahead and cut two at that size. Once we get that one cut, we'll just cut a second one too for the other legs. These clamps are pretty handy. Something like this would be tough to do without clamps, so I use those clamps. So I'm going to do 2 screw holes here. Okay, for this other side, measured 9 1/4 on each of these, and then clamp this in place. I actually clamped one of them while they were down on the ground. You clamp them both down on the ground. Got them flushed out here. Remember, this board is exactly like that one, and I'm flushed out here, got them level here. This thing is not screwed down here yet, which this will bring these in, and that will make it a duplicate of that set of legs down there. All right, with all the legs screwed in place, the braces are screwed in. It's actually pretty sturdy, and you could make the argument, hey, it's good to go the way it is. But if someone really leaned on one end, it would probably break those legs. So if you recall from the diagram, we're going to put some diagonal supports in the middle there. I know on this whole thing we've been talking about using actual measurements and stuff, or actually using the actual parts to measure stuff. In this particular case, there's not a real good way to get in there and use the actual piece here to make those diagonal pieces. These are the diagonal pieces I'm talking about. There's not a really good way to get in there and make it from our actual part. So I went back to the CAD and actually put a ton of dimensions on that one piece. So my thoughts here is may just actually cut this one out to the CAD dimensions, and it should be close enough that it'll work. Well, that worked out perfect actually. The dimensions that from that CAD diagram laid them in there perfect, as you can see here. So what I did is I put a mark exactly in the center of that board and of both of these, because I'm going to offset them in the middle like this. That way I can run, you know, screws in here, screws in here, and won't have to toenail those. So you can see. So I'll just screw these down and then it'll be done. Okay, now we have it. It's a nice and sturdy table. Actually, it turned out to be pretty dang heavy. I'm sure when all this wood dries out, it'll lighten up some. But this thing set perfectly level. It is not rocking at all. So a few weeks went by from the point where I built that table, and it sat here in my workshop for probably 3 weeks. And all that pressure treated wood dried out pretty good. It actually, some of the board shrunk too. So since it's dried out, and I haven't put it down there in the area where I'm going to put it within the tree line where I do my shooting, I've decided I'm going to seal it. And it's probably getting a little, going a little overboard to seal it, but as it turns out, I have sealer already that I could use. So since I already have some sealer and it dried out and I haven't put it down there yet, I'm going to go ahead and seal it. So I'm going to show you how to do that too. And you'd use the same method if you were sealing a deck. So there's all different kinds of sealer. This is what I've got. I bought this a while back. I don't even remember what I bought it for, but I never used it, so it was sitting here in my garage. So this is what I'm going to use. Okay, on these sprayers, once you put this in, you pump it. I always pump it 25 times. I took the table and transported it down here by my shed because I don't want overspray in my workshop, and you end up spraying the stuff everywhere when you do it with a sprayer. And you also don't want to do it on grass because any overspray can will kill the plant life around. Check this out too. If you remember when I built this thing, we put these boards all the way together, and you can see there's definite cracks, and that's just where the board shrunk after drying out. Alright, got it all sprayed down, so it looks all wet all over. I pretty much did everything, legs and all. The only thing really I didn't do was the bottom sides of the boards on the table. I probably put it on thicker than you should. I think that stuff I had, that water seal, I mean, I've had it a lot of years and it might be out of date. It wasn't spraying that good out of the sprayer. When I've used that stuff before, it sprayed better than that. It was coming out kind of thick. So again, just because I had the stuff, figured I'd do that extra measure of waterproofing. Hey guys, I just wanted to show you this. This is the what I call the shooting range here at Casa de Willis, but it's really just an area just behind my house into the tree line. And it's not that elaborate at all. I've got some pieces of plywood screwed to some trees, and I got some logs that I set cans on and shoot at, so it's nothing fancy. However, used to when I came down here, I really didn't have anywhere to set my stuff down. So this is where my shooting table ended up. So I wanted to show you where I put it. So it fits in nice down here. It'll just stay down here all the time. And that way I have it for whenever I come down here to do a little sport shooting. Thanks for watching my video. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next video.